And ask the remaining part of the chamber to clear. We have a fairly lengthy agenda. Two items that we will pull. I have had a request to have 2012-522 pulled and also 2013-423. So we'll go ahead and deal with the other issues that are on our consent agenda, and then we will come back to those two and deal with them individually. So the items that I'm going to read through now are the items that are on our consent agenda, and unless somebody requests to have one of those pulled, we will vote on these as a package, as a consent package. RS 2013-698, a resolution by Matthews, Claiborne, and Bennett, amending the rent and utilities provision for domestic violence program lease. This was administratively approved on 5/14 by the planning staff. RS 2013-699, resolution by Matthews and Claiborne, accepting a grant from MDHA to the Metro Historic Commission to perform Section 106 environmental review for development proposals using federal funds to determine adverse effects to historical properties. There is no planning commission action required on that. RS 2013-703, resolution by Moore, Gilmore, and Matthews, amending the lease agreement between Metro Government and MFP Baseball, LLC. Administrative approval was given on 5/14. BL 2013-435, sponsors Bennett, Claiborne, and others, an ordinance approving a lease agreement between the Metropolitan Government through the Metropolitan Board of Education and Liberty Collegiate University. Administrative approval was given on April the 22nd. BL 2013-436, sponsors Baker, Bedney, and others, an ordinance approving a lease agreement between Metro through the Metropolitan Board of Education and the Nashville Preparatory Academy. Administratively approved on May the 3rd. BL 2013-437, sponsor is Langster, an ordinance to abandon a portion of alley number 902 right-of-way. Administrative approval given on March the 12th. BL 2013-438, sponsor is Moore, an ordinance to abandon a portion of alley number 428 right-of-way. Administrative approval given on March the 21st. BL 2013-439, sponsor is Allen, an ordinance to abandon a portion of alley number 434 right-of-way. Administrative approval given on February the 5th. Okay. That's okay. BL 2013-430, sponsor is Claiborne and Langster, an ordinance disposing a portion of parcels 77, 78, and 86 on map 92-14 to HCRI Tennessee Properties, LLC. Administrative approval given on April the 12th. BL 2013-441, sponsors Baker, Langster, and others, an ordinance authorizing the Metropolitan Government to abandon easements rights previously retained within a portion of the former right-of-way of 5001 Tennessee Avenue. Administratively approved on April the 12th. BL 2013-442, sponsor is Scott Davis, Bennett, and others, an ordinance authorizing Metro to negotiate and accept easements for the Haynes Park Stormwater Improvement Project and for Manor Place Stormwater Improvement Project. Administratively approved on March the 19th. BL 2013-443, sponsors Potts and Claiborne, an ordinance authorizing Metro to negotiate and accept easements for Bellcrest Drive stormwater improvements. Administrative approval given on March the 18th. BL 2013-444, sponsors Purdue, Potts, and Claiborne, an ordinance authorizing Metro to negotiate and accept easements for the Sunny Slope Court stormwater improvements. Administrative approval on March the 18th. Bill 2013-445, sponsors Matthews, Claiborne, and Potts, an ordinance approving the abandonment of approximately 65 linear feet of an existing 8-inch sanitary sewer main and easements to accept one new sanitary sewer manhole. Administrative approval given on March the 21st. Bill 2013-348, sponsors Lancaster and Berry, an ordinance to change from MULA, CF, and ORI to MUGA, MUIA zoning in Midtown between I-440 and I-40. This was approved by the Planning Commission on April the 25th by a vote of 8-0. Bill 2013-403, sponsors Johnson and Potts, an ordinance amending Section 17.28.100 pertaining to exterior lighting of buildings and structures. This was approved by the Planning Commission on April the 25th by a vote of 9-0. Bill 2013-410, sponsor Baker, an ordinance to change from R6 to SP for 813 Watts Avenue to permit light manufacturing and single-family residence units. This was approved with conditions by the Commission on February the 28th by a vote of 7-1. Bill 2013-411, sponsor is Westerholm, an ordinance to change from RS5 to SP zoning for properties on Sevier Street to permit 10 detached single-family units. This was approved with conditions on February the 28th by a vote of 8-0. Bill 2013-412, sponsor is Weiner and Blaylock, an ordinance of the Metropolitan Government changed from SP to RS80 zoning for property located on Hicks Road. This was approved by the Planning Commission on April the 25th by a vote of 9-0. Bill 2013-413, sponsor is Duval, an ordinance to change from OR20 to IWD to CS zoning for property at 12,629 Old Hickory Boulevard, approved by the Planning Commission on 3/14 by a vote of 9-0. Bill 2013-414, sponsor is Baker, an ordinance to change from R6 to CS and CS to SP zoning for properties at 5100, 5104 Illinois Avenue to permit a mixture of uses. This was approved with conditions, disapproved without the conditions by a vote of 9-0 on March the 28th. Bill 2013-415, sponsor is Lancaster, an ordinance to change from RS5 to SP zoning for properties at 1729 and 1731 Knoll Street to permit 4 residential units. This was approved with conditions, disapproval without conditions on March the 14th by a vote of 9-0. Last page. BL 2013-416, sponsor is Matthews, an ordinance to change from RS40 to MUL zoning for property located on Whites Creek Pike, approved 9-0 on March the 14th. BL 2013-417, sponsor is McGuire, an ordinance to change from R10 to SP zoning for properties located on Glen Echo Road. This was approved with conditions, disapproved without the conditions, vote of 9-0 on March the 14th. BL 2013-418, sponsor is Hunt and Claiborne, an ordinance to amend the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to specific automobile-related uses and sign requirements by modifying which zoning district specific automobile-related uses are permitted. This was approved 8-0 on February the 14th. And BL 2013-419, sponsors Claiborne, an ordinance amending the Metro Zoning Code pertaining to bulk standards for single-family structures on lots containing less than the minimum required lot area. This was approved 6-0 by the Commission on February the 28th. So that constitutes our consent agenda. Are there motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda? Those in favor? Councilman Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had my light on. I'm sorry. I was going to ask that 522 not be part of the consent agenda so we could discuss it.
I have that set aside.
Thank you, sir.
We have 2 that are set aside. Okay, those in favor of the consent agenda? Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. BL 2013-423, Sponsor is Moore, Claiborne, and Gilmore. An ordinance approving an ordinance between Metro and the state of Tennessee concerning the exchange of certain parcels of real property. There's a request to defer one meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion made and seconded to defer BL 2013-423 one meeting. Those in favor? Any opposed? Bill is deferred one meeting. RS 2012-522 resolution sponsored Duval, Matthews, and others to exercise options to purchase real property for the Metropolitan Public Schools. Councilman Duval has asked that we defer this for discussion. So, Councilman, you're the sponsor of the bill, member of the committee. So,
thank you. Test.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this specific bill, what I'm asking the committee to do is allow a deferral for 2 meetings so that we can try to coordinate a public hearing for the people that live in that immediate area so that they can discuss this before the council. I think there's a lot of valid arguments. These are not a group of people that are anti-school, that don't want schools. In fact, most of them recognize we need to have schools, and they recognize that they're of the utmost urgency. Their issue is with the location. One of the things I would like to draw that's pertinent to this particular committee's attention to was our original agenda that came out when we first heard this bill, and I'm going to say this probably was November of last year. It states that this resolution has been approved by the Board of Education and by the Planning Commission, although the Planning Commission staff expressed some concerns regarding the suitability of the property as school site due to the property's location on a dead-end street. The Planning Commission approval letter notes that the location would provide a limited opportunity for children to walk to school and for community access to the site. I think that's important as laying a foundation to allow the people that live out there to testify before this committee. There has been 2 public meetings. One, the school board put on, which was very thankful for that. They gave a layout of their entire plan, and quite frankly, I think they did a good job of presenting their plan. Unfortunately, the citizens had the right questions on cards, although they were allowed to speak at the end. By that time, many had already left. The second meeting was held by Will Pinkston, and I technically was there as support, and Will did a great job of talking to the community, talking about the site and what changes could be possibly coming down the road, like setting the school back a little further to get more traffic off of the main road. But no definite committal. There wouldn't be a second school, no committal to any of the infrastructure needs that are necessary out there. So I think that we need to listen to those folks, particularly the folks that are within that 2,000 homes that are immediately impacted. It's one thing if you live 2.5 miles from the school site, you never have to go down Smith Springs Road. It's another thing if you do. It's even worse if you're a parent and you're expected to walk your child. Now, the school board, as I understand, has stated they can put the children on buses and plan to do that now, which does alleviate the safety issue. I wish we could have had that commitment earlier in the process, but that's one of the positives that this process has brought out. So all of the bickering that's went on back and forth has not been unfruitful. It has been, just if that one thing has been improved on. So anyway, I would like this body to hear what the people have to say, and I think we as a body owe it to those folks. So I'm asking for a 2-meeting deferral, please. Thank you.
Are you making that in form of a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Before we vote, could we hear the other folks that are on the queue here? Councilman Bedney?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Robert, for being such a strong speaker. I mean, concerned about what happens in your district. Now, I have to be concerned what happens in my district. And there is overcrowding in the southeast in many schools all over the district. And the sooner we solve the issue of the schools and when the schools get built, the sooner that's going to start diminishing the impact of the lack of schools in the rest of the southeast. So I don't disagree with some of what he's saying. I just want to see a resolution happen immediately. A deferral will impact the ability of the school to find another site within a reasonable amount of time. If they go beyond July to find a new site, then that's going to delay the school building for yet a whole other year. So I just am on a tough spot, which I'm sure it happens to other council people in the Southeast, to have to explain why we keep delaying a decision that is going to keep the overcrowding for yet another year, instead of making a decision as soon as possible, yes or no, so we can move forward with this school issue. So what I'm asking here is that we don't defer it, that we bring it to the body of the council and we vote yes or no on this motion, on this resolution.
Were you in the Budget Committee hearing?
Just now, yes.
That just passed?
Mm-hmm.
Then I think from the school board, the comment was made asking the question about the impact that a two-meeting deferral would have, and the answer was that there would be no significant deferral because there's no approval, there's no budget for a new school building at this point in time.
Well, if you don't mind, Chair, can we ask them back in here and ask the same question again? Because I don't think they understood the question that was asked, and I think I think it's important to clarify that.
The gentleman from the school, I've forgotten which one of you it was that answered that question. The question was, would a two-meeting deferral significantly impact moving forward one way or the other with these potential school sites?
Thank you. As I responded before, a two-week delay would probably not impact us, but I want to expand that by saying if everything goes well now, this school will open in August of 2015. And we have a 60 to 90 day closing window. We have design, and we'd anticipate starting construction in March of next year, and then have it open ready for that August meeting. So if we have any kind of significant delay, and particularly if we end up finding ourselves in a position of looking for another site, then the 2015 date will not be met. We've looked in this zoned area extensively over the last several years, and there are very limited options, and this is by far the best option. So we'd like to know as soon as possible whether this site is going to be approved, so we can, try to keep it moving and keep it on schedule for August 2015.
Okay, so we're at the very beginning of a new 90-day window then, right?
No, that was just cumulative of how much time it will take us to get the project started. We're not necessarily in the middle of a window. We just...
I mean, as far as the option is concerned.
Oh, yes, actually a 120-day option.
Okay, so we're at the beginning of a 120-day option. So
that's correct.
All right. Councilman Glover.
Okay, Mr. Henson, I'd like to get a little clarification, because when I heard the answer a minute ago, I didn't think maybe I had phrased it properly. And it's not a 2-week delay we're talking about here. This would be literally a month delay if we defer this for 2 meetings. And so what would be the realistic timeline of when that school can open? Because I don't ever remember in the history you open a school in the middle of a year.
That's correct. We typically do not open a school in the middle of the year because we've got new attendance, school attendance zone lines being drawn, et cetera. And I think you're correct. I think Mr. Murdoch may have misunderstood. He thought it was 2 weeks. What he's referring to is the fact that we know that even with a new 120-day option to purchase, whenever the green light is given, there's from Metro Public Properties information, there's a 60 to 90-day window of time before we can actually close on the property. We're very hopeful that the funding for the new elementary school in that area will be approved with the capital budget, hopefully sometime in June. And we would like to begin immediately, beginning our studies, et cetera, on the property itself, hiring architects, going ahead and moving forward with the project, as Mr. Murdoch mentioned, as soon as possible so that we can meet that August 1st, 2015 timeframe we're looking at as to when the school would open.
And I talked to Mr. Pinkston this morning. It's my understanding, and I think you just said this, that you've spent years looking for a location, and you really are very limited on what locations there may actually be in this proposed zone, realizing you haven't drawn the lines yet. But with that in mind, is there another option for this size of a lot?
We have not located it. The only other option beside this would be to assemble a piece of property from several properties and probably involve purchasing homes or grouping those together. But there's not another vacant piece of property that's better than this one, and very few at all in this school zone.
Thank you. Councilman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay. I'm just going to say what everybody else is thinking on this one. Speak from the heart here. More importantly, everyone believes that the people need to be heard. And all of us are advocates of good schools here in this chamber. We all have been. We all love our school. We all work hard and volunteer in our schools, most of us here today in this chamber. And to be in a position where, we want to listen to the neighbors in South Nashville. At the same time, we want to provide good schools to the community. I urge both sides of this dilemma, regardless of how this vote goes down today, to have some serious, thoughtful, and compromising discussions on this. And I know there have been talks, and I admire the courage of both Councilmember Duvall and also of Ms. Johnson and their passion for supporting our local schools in this. However, though, I personally, and I may be wrong, God knows, I don't know everything, but I really think, and I could be wrong about this, there needs to be some more education on this from the school board and how we can prevent this sort of concern from happening again in the future. Because I would surely hate to be in a position to choose the feelings of constituents over the educating the needs of our children, especially in an area where we need more schools. However, though, it's very important that we have to listen to the voices of the people that live in that community. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't see any other. Councilman Pridemore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Considering the second location or other locations of the proposed site, you said there's more than one. What's the distance, or how far from that original site is another possible site available?
There are several sites that we've looked at in that area. They're all along Smith Springs Road, and they all fall within this 1.25 mile distance. So they're very close. So I would say the next sites are closer within 1/2 mile, and then there's some are basically 1 mile away from this site.
So whatever issues having to be addressed on this site would still be needed to be addressed on the other two sites, or the other sites. So they're all same issues on all sites in that district.
Same issues are shared as far as traffic and congestion. There are other issues with other sites. Topography is not workable. Configuration of the land makes it very difficult to get a good, efficient layout of the building, and a number of other issues. But on the issue of traffic along Smith Springs Road, they're basically all the same.
So when it comes to putting your minds together and trying to have some resolve, there really is not much possibility of resolve, is there, of compromising, other than because all the issues are still the same. I mean, you're still going to have traffic issues. You're going to still have issues involving children walking in the small perimeter. And I think you've gotten that resolved by Dr. Register committing to the bus service anywhere within that 1.5 mile.
Yes, sir, Councilman Pridemore. Yeah, that's a great point. And Councilman Davis, we agree completely. There's no question that this process needs to be improved and be improved for all future schools to come. Mr. Murdoch has been increasing the conversation with Public Works. We're using y'all's leadership as council members to help with that process as well. Specifically to your point, yes, you're correct that the issues are going to be the same, it seems like, with many of the possible locations, and those aren't even realistic locations for the school itself. But moving forward, we're obviously trying to do better about working with the community, hearing their ideas, and that will go forward throughout the planning process. A lot of this has been accelerated. For example, the traffic study was done earlier in the process than normal to try to help address some of the citizen concerns. And we've been, as we're going forward, we're committing to hearing from them and listening as we develop the school site and things like that.
Thank you.
Council Lady Evans?
I guess and I don't have a position on the school. It's your district, so I certainly defer to you guys. But I do have an interest in how we're planning for our schools. So if you do this deferral, we have an opportunity to sort of understand this planning process, because, I mean, that's what's going on in my district. I have schools that are overcrowded and they're sitting on roads that can't accommodate them, and you know, it's really been tough, and so it's a problem all over the county. So, I mean, is that your intention? Because I would really like to know.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't want to speak for Chairman Bedney, but he's been absolutely wonderful in saying, look, the process is broke, and we've got to find a way to fix it. He's nodding his head, and I'll be happy to yield my time to you, Fabian, if you'd like to take it. But we've researched some of this. I even asked a question how we could fix the process, what ordinance needs to be written. And as I understand it, and Mr. Cooper, I'm going to blindside you here real quick. When we discuss trying to do some type of ordinance, we're really hampered somewhat with the way the charter is structured. Is that not correct? With regarding these schools and forcing them through the normal process, or am I misspeaking?
There are two ways that property can be acquired. Both require council action. For schools, property is actually owned by the metropolitan government. The schools board is essentially custodian of the property. So all property acquisition has to come to the council. It can either be done in this form, which is negotiating an option to purchase on the front end and then bringing that to the council for approval. The other method is by ordinance, where the council is basically authorizing the acquisition by condemnation if it comes to that. So the option approach is by far the easiest, and because you're getting everybody's agreement on the front end.
Yeah, and I mean, in my district, we just had a property acquisition, and we used condemnation. So did we explore condemnation? Not that I'm advocating for that, but did we explore condemnation for a more suitable piece of property for this school?
We did not. The properties that we looked at, and particularly this piece, we thought it provided a great site for us in terms of size, layout, topography, et cetera. So we did not pursue it.
Okay, so that would be a possibility for an alternative school. You know, like I said, I don't have a position on your school, but I really do have some pretty strong feelings about the planning process and how that's working, especially as this community grows. And I would encourage the committee to defer so that we could talk about those things.
And I don't want to lose sight on that there's two schools, not one. The elementary school is 1 year with 800. The middle school is another year with 1,000. That's 1,800 children, and we're going to put them on buses, or people are going to drive them to school. And we've solved the safety issue, and thank you for doing that. And I appreciate the commitment, but we haven't solved the traffic issue. People from 7 to 8 or later every day sit in line for 20 to 25 minutes to go a mile. And what is this additional traffic going to do to the rest of the community? So thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I still have 4 names in the queue, so we'll get around here in the order that they're up. Councilman Glover.
I guess this is really, and forgive and indulge me on this, because this is really more of a budget and finance question, but it didn't come up in budget and finance. If you didn't get this piece of property and you ended up piecing together other properties, and I don't know who needs to answer this, Mr. Henson or whoever, what's the cost going to do? Is it going to go up considerably for the land?
It very well could. As Mr. Murdoch said, we did not look at that potential of condemnation since we had this piece of property available and a willing seller. It very well could cause the cost to go up if we needed to piece together several different parcels through condemnation, but we just don't know. We don't have that information.
Councilor Gilmore, thank you for being patient.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. One is a budget and finance question, just because I didn't hear it. I said in the meeting, but I was not on the committee. And then the second question is a planning question. The first was, I noticed that what the assessor appraised the property as is considerably lower than the outside assessor. And I just wanted to know what practice or how did they come about going with the outside assessor versus our metropolitan government, which we rely on? That's the first question. It's $400,000 higher. And the second piece is, we have planning here, so I would like to hear what they would have to say as it relates to the school and the infrastructure and just what impact that would have on the community. Thank you.
John, can you address Okay. Mr. Henson, can you come back and address her first question?
I'll ask Mr. Murdoch to, please.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm not familiar with the assessment, the earlier one you mentioned. We went through Metro Public Properties standard procedure. They took bids on appraisers and commissioned this, and then the appraisal came in. The one that is referenced, I'm not aware of it, don't know how recent it was or whether it was in the past.
I think Mr. Clay might be able to. I had a similar question that I asked independently of him, and he had responded to me a couple of days ago. Mr. Clay, would you?
Yeah, because I'm not getting it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, you're referring to
the 2 appraisals.
Yes, the first appraisal that I believe is in the agenda analysis, and Mr. Cooper may be able to answer this even better, is based on the tax assessment. And then there was, I don't know the exact time frame, but then what Mr. Murdoch was just referring to was the professional appraisers coming in to do such as you would buy a home. You don't normally base that on the tax appraisal, but the appraisal that was done by professional tax appraisers.
So is that an appraisal from the owner or from the school board?
No, sir. It's done by, it's bidded out, as according to Mr. Murdoch, by Metro Property. And then after they've received bids and choose the independent assessor to determine the value of the property.
Okay, so the total cumulative price that's on the table then is the negotiated price that the owners want versus the higher appraisal that was given. Is that a correct statement?
There are 3 different numbers. There's the tax that you're referring to, then there's the appraised value, and then there's the agreed upon value. Originally the landowners were asking for $2 million. We came in with the appraised, Metro Property did the negotiations back and forth, and that's how they were able to agree upon the price that the sellers were willing to sell at.
Okay. Does that answer your question, number 1?
It does, thank you. The only thing I would say is that I think our assessors are professional too, maybe just not independent, but I do think they're professional.
Yes, okay. Planning?
Well, I'm not sure exactly which questions regarding the infrastructure you have, but in the letter that we sent, we noted that there aren't adequate sidewalks or bike lanes around the site that's proposed. We believe that since it's on a dead end, that there are also some traffic issues as far as the flow to and from the school. In best practices, we would look for the school to be more centrally located so the children could access it from all sides. But those are best practice. That is a best practices issue. And so it depends on what you have available, what property is that they've looked at, the other sites that they might look for in that district. We don't know what that is because we weren't part of the initial process when they started looking for the sites. Also, I point out that at least in our mapping shows that there might be some water and sewer infrastructure needs for that lot. We don't know that. That would be something that we would look for water services to speak to, but at least in our mapping, it indicates that there is inadequate water and sewer at that lot.
Thank you. That does answer the question. So I have a follow-up question, and that would be then, who does the planning for the school board? Who are they relying on to make those decisions? And why isn't it in conjunction with our city planning that we have?
I think currently the schools have their own planning department. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct. And Councilor, you bring up a great point. We're trying to work better together in the future. And that's something that we're learning all the time and trying to work together on that. With regards to the sewer and the water infrastructure, I believe we checked with Public Works, and there is more than adequate water and sewer infrastructure there available.
Councilor Lady Berry, we're finally around to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question, and this is just more about the actual use of this property. I realize that the resolution says that we have to acquire it, and it is for the use of benefit of Metro Public Schools. In the acquisition, though, and perhaps planning can answer this, if during the process of evaluating and all of the studies that need to then be done, and is it possible then that this school would not be built at this site, and if so, then we would still have the property and we could do something else with it, is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand that question, Councilor. If we acquire the property, could we still do something else with it?
Well, no, I mean, I've been led in, they've said that there still needs to be some studies done and some additional traffic. I guess I'm trying to ask if there's any way that it wouldn't be built if we pass this.
Well, that would be up to schools. If they acquire...
Okay, so if we acquire it, we give it to schools, and that's because we're using their monies, so then they get to do and just do what they want with the property.
It would be their property at that point, and it'd be up to them.
That's my question. Thank you so much.
All right, Councilman Bettany.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councilman Duval for mentioning my preoccupation with how we go about designing the schools. And I think we at the council set up the charter and the legislation in a way that doesn't help the schools do the schools that we need them to do. Like we set up that they have to have so many acres on a site, for example, and that limits the amount of sites they can find. So we, the council, are the ones that build the infrastructure. We are the ones that set up all these rules. And then we tell them to work within that framework. And then we come back and tell them, now that you did it within that framework, I still don't like the site, or I still like the site. So I guess what I'm trying to say, it is okay and it is right for us to engage in a discussion about how to improve the legislation and to have a better way of going about choosing these sites. And how we tell them to work with all the different departments, but I don't think that conversation needs to happen necessarily on a particular, when we are deciding the purchase of a site, because that's all we are asked to do by legislation. If I'm wrong, I mean, I asked our lawyer, Cooper, what is that we are asked to vote here today? And the way I understood is we already rely on other departments to do all this research and decisions for us. And what we are asked to do now is to say, you did a good job, or you didn't do a good job, or we agree with you, or we didn't agree with you, but we are not going, we don't have a whole department that can do this research for us. We are relying on all these departments. So I guess to make a long story short is, I do agree that we need to do a better job in creating better legislation on how to build these schools, but I don't think that that applies to this particular side. At this point, what worries me, and I appreciate that Councilman Davis is worried about some of the community. I am concerned about the people in my district that are going to overcrowded schools because there is a lack of schools in the southeast. And I want us to make a decision tomorrow, yes or no, and empower the school to either build it there or find another site. That's all I'm asking, so I appreciate your time.
Council Lady?
Thank you, Chair Claiborne. I wanted to ask a question of the school administration. Is that permissible? And this is in regards to planning, to help answer a little bit of Council Lady Gilmore's question about planning. Is there a former member of the Planning Commission staff that is now on staff at Metro Schools? And does that assist in the process?
Thank you, Council Lady. Yes, we do. We have Ryan Latimer, who used to work in the planning office, and he helps to act as a liaison to his former employer. And we're trying to, again, improve that all the time. And appreciate your leadership and the council try to help us do that.
Thank you. Additionally, I do want the council to take into consideration that the affordable housing development that this council approved in my district is actually under construction now. There are going to be a lot of families that are going to come from that affordable housing development in Nashville Village. Secondly, we have a 4-story apartment complex that we also approved in this council that's getting ready to take shape as well. So I just want you all to see the urgency in this situation, that we're not slowing down. We've already got the issue of 17 portables at Lakeview, 10 or more at Edison, which they will have to be placed on the front of the property due to the back being the floodplain. And we have developments of that magnitude, such as the 4-story apartment complex we approved here in the council that's underway, as well as the affordable housing development. Thank you.
Councilman Glover, one more time.
Mr. Collier, if you are delayed one more year and you're not able to open a new school until fall 2016, what's the picture going to look like at Edison and Lakeview as far as population goes in those two schools by delaying one more year?
Lakeview is at a critical juncture at this point. There will be more students in portables at Lakeview than we have in some schools. The real effects of overcrowding, number one, some students will be going to lunch at 9:30, 9:45, and some won't go to lunch until 1 o'clock. So that means they will have been in school 5 hours before they get to eat. The other concern is whenever the next tornado comes through Antioch, number one, can we get that many children quickly into the building to shelter them? And number two, is there even going to be enough space in the building to shelter them? It's really getting critical. Lakeview has grown by 120 students from 2010 to 2012. They will grow by another 100 within 5 years. We've just maxed out there, and waiting another year or two would just be critical.
Council Lady Gilmore?
Thank you. I think I'm going to go with the council member Duvall on this, just because Mr. Sloan has shared what best practices are, and I think we want to use best practices, and it's not an issue of, if I don't support this, a vote against the schools. I totally disagree. I tell everyone every day, I give the schools my biggest investment. I give them my daughter, and then I vote on a budget every year that's 40% of our total budget, so that's not the issue. I do think we do need to take more time in planning, so we don't have to continue to run up against these issues, because my question would be, why are the schools already out there? Why are they overcrowded? And I think it shouldn't be a rush type of thing. I think there needs to be more planning and infrastructure. And I think we do need to listen to the best practices. And it sounds like we're not doing that right now.
Okay, I appreciate your discussion. We've had a good round here. Everybody's had a chance to say what they had on their mind, and so we're at the point of voting now. So we have a motion before us to defer for 2 meetings, and it's been properly seconded. So those in favor of a 2-meeting deferral, raise your hand, please. And those who are opposed to a 2-meeting deferral. The vote is 4-4, so we will not make a recommendation. There are no other items to come before us, so the meeting is adjourned.